I planned everything, every single step. And when my son-in-law finally realized what had happened, I was already sitting at my kitchen table in Sudbury with a cup of coffee, watching the snow come down outside, thinking, yeah, that sounds about right. Let me back up. I'm 63 years old, retired from the mine, 31 years at Vale's copper cliff operation, which sounds romantic until you've spent a February underground in -30 wind chill. I'm not a complicated man. I fix things. I keep records. I don't talk much, which people tend to mistake for not thinking much. That's their problem, not mine. My daughter, I'll call her my girl, because that's what she is, and always will be to me. She married a man named Bryce Holloway. Wait, no. That name's in the file. Let me think. His name was Chadwick. Chad Anstruther. Investment analyst, Bay Street, Toronto. 38 years old when they married. He had the kind of handshake that's designed to impress, and the kind of eyes that are always calculating something. The first time I met him, he was wearing a blazer to a backyard barbecue in August. My wife leaned over to me and whispered, "He's nervous. Han, be nice." I was nice. I handed him a Molson and pointed him at the lawn chairs. He looked at the lawn chair like it might have a form he needed to fill out. My daughter was 31 when they got engaged. She'd worked her whole life. Nursing degree from Laurentian, then her NP designation, then a management role at Health Sciences North. She earned every dollar she had, and she loved him. I could see that. I didn't like it, but I could see it. I'll be honest with you. I had a bad feeling from the beginning, not the kind of bad feeling you can put into words at a dinner table without your wife kicking you under it. Just a low-level static, like when you're deep underground and the rock sounds different than it should. You notice. You file it away. We helped with the wedding. $40,000. My wife and I had been putting money aside since our girl was born. A separate account, just for her. We didn't tell her how much was in it. She knew it existed, but she didn't know the number. We topped it up every year. It was ours to give when the time was right. The wedding was beautiful. Elmhurst Inn, outside of Ingersoll. 212 people. He had a lot of friends from work, guys in suits who made jokes I didn't understand and laughed at each other too loudly. My side was mostly miners, nurses, a couple of guys from my hockey league, and my brother-in-law Wendell, who wore his good flannel shirt and danced with my wife until her feet hurt. I liked Wendell's side of the room better. They moved to Toronto. My daughter took a director position at a hospital network downtown. Chad kept doing what Chad did, which was something involving derivatives and client portfolios that he explained to me once at Christmas, and I nodded through because it was Christmas. They bought a condo in Liberty Village, one of those new glass buildings where you can see right into your neighbor's living room and call it a lifestyle. I visited twice a year, stayed in a hotel because their guest room was a Peloton room, and I wasn't going to ask anyone to move a Peloton on my account. My wife stayed longer. She could see my daughter better than I could, see the parts she was hiding. "She seems tired," my wife said one night in our hotel room, the kind of tired that isn't about sleep. I nodded, filed it away. The first concrete thing I noticed was money. Not his money or her money, their money, or the absence of it. My daughter called me one evening in January, about 14 months into the marriage, and asked if I'd ever had to deal with CRA about a missed installment payment. She was calm, practical, my girl always is, but there was something careful in her voice. I asked a few questions. She said Chad handled all the finances. She said the joint account had been lower than expected lately. She said she was probably worrying for nothing. I said, sure, probably. I called my accountant the next day. A man named Harvey Delorme, who has been doing my taxes since 1998 and knows every asset I own down to the last decimal point. I told him what I'd heard. He said what accountants say, keep watching. I kept watching. What I hadn't told my daughter, what I hadn't told anyone, was what I'd been building since before she was born. I grew up in a company town. My father worked the mine, his father worked the mine, and the understanding was that you worked the mine and the company took care of you, and when the company stopped taking care of you, you were out of luck. My father got sick at 57. The company's pension was decent but not enough. I watched my mother use up her savings in 3 years. I watched her sell the car. I watched her decide between the furnace filter and the prescription. That did something to me that I couldn't explain to anyone who hadn't seen it. So I started early, very early. Worked overtime every chance I got in my 30s. Bought a rental property in Sudbury when the market was flat, a duplex on Lorne Street, then another one in Hanmer. opened a self-directed RRSP at 41, and managed it myself with the help of Harvey and a lot of Saturday mornings at the kitchen table with a legal pad and a cup of coffee. I didn't buy boats. I didn't buy snowmobiles. My truck is 11 years old. My wife drives a Honda Civic that we paid cash for in 2019. What I built slowly. What I built nobody knew about except Harvey, my wife, and the government of Canada. By the time my daughter got married, I had the rental properties, both fully paid off, a non-registered investment portfolio, 2 TFSAs, and a pension that paid me comfortably every month. Altogether, Harvey had put my net worth at just over $2.3 million. I didn't look like $2.3 million. That was intentional. 14 months into my daughter's marriage, Chad Anstruther started making assumptions. He had mentioned, at the wedding, that he knew I'd done all right from the mine. He'd asked, once, at Easter, whether I'd ever considered putting my rental income into something more growth-oriented, and I'd said I was happy with where it was, and he'd nodded the way people nod when they think you're making a mistake but don't want to say so. I let him think what he thought. The trouble started in March. My daughter called me on a Sunday evening. She'd been quiet on the phone for a few weeks. Shorter calls, fewer details. This time she didn't start with small talk. "Dad," she said, "Chad wants to talk to you about something. He wants to do it in person. He says it's about family financial planning." I said, "Okay, he wants to come up to Sudbury next weekend." I said, "The guest room is ready." She paused. "Dad, I don't know what he's going to say exactly. He wouldn't really tell me. I just wanted to warn you." I told her I appreciated it. I told her I loved her. After I hung up, I sat at the kitchen table for a while. Then I called Harvey. I said, "Harvey, I need you to put together a summary document for me. Everything. Full picture. And I need it formatted so a Bay Street type can read it in one sitting and feel whatever feeling a Bay Street type feels when the numbers are bigger than he expected." Harvey said, "That's not how I usually present." I said, "I know. I'd appreciate it." He called me back Thursday with a PDF. I printed it. 12 pages. Put it in a manila folder. Set it on the kitchen table face down, under a stack of Maclean's magazines. Chad arrived Saturday afternoon. He drove up in a black Audi Q7, which I mention only because the 400 from Toronto was icy that weekend, and I'd been a little worried. He was wearing a nice wool coat and carried a laptop bag. He shook my hand at the door. My wife made lasagna. We ate. We talked about nothing important. The Leafs, the weather, whether Tim Hortons had declined since the Americans bought it, and then my wife took her book to the living room and gave us the kitchen. He opened his laptop. I've thought a lot about the next part. I've tried to be fair to him in my mind. He wasn't a monster. He was a man who had decided, somewhere along the way, that the people around him were either assets or liabilities, and he'd gotten so comfortable with that math that he'd stopped feeling it as cynical. It was just how he thought. He had a presentation. 4 slides. It was actually well done. I'll give him that. He'd done research on estate planning, on the tax implications of transferring property in Ontario, on the benefits of consolidating assets within a family trust. He spoke confidently. He used words like legacy structure and intergenerational efficiency, and he explained that he and my daughter had talked about the fact that I was getting older, and that it might be time to think about protecting what I'd built. Then he got to the part he'd come to say. He thought it would make sense, for tax purposes, for me to transfer the Lorne Street property, and possibly the Hanmer duplex, into a family trust, which he would help set up and manage, given his professional expertise. This would shield the assets from probate and streamline the eventual transfer. He smiled when he said it. Confident smile. The smile of a man who thinks he's doing you a favor. I let him finish. I looked at the laptop screen for a moment. Then I looked at him. "That's a lot of thought you put into that," I said. He nodded. "I just want to make sure you're protected." I reached under the stack of Maclean's and put the manila folder on the table. "Before we go further," I said, "I want to show you something. Harvey put this together this week. He's my accountant, been with me 30 years. I just want to make sure we're working from the same picture." He took the folder. He opened it. He looked at the first page, the summary sheet, net worth overview, asset breakdown. I watched his face. There's a particular expression that happens when someone recalculates. It's not big. It's something in the eyes, a small contraction, like a shutter adjusting to more light than expected. He went through about 4 pages, and then he stopped, set the folder down, picked up his coffee mug, put it down without drinking. "These properties," he said, "these are paid off?" "Since 2019, I said. "And this portfolio?" He tapped the page. This is non-registered. And the pension, that's separate from this? Everything on page 1 is separate from the pension, I said. The pension's on page 11. He went to page 11. He was quiet for a long time. I let him be quiet. I didn't realize, he said, finally. No, I said. Most people don't. He was looking at the folder differently now, not like a presentation to be made, like a problem he hadn't expected. His slide deck was still on the laptop screen. Slide 3. Benefits of a consolidated family trust. It looked small to me now in the light of the kitchen, with the folder sitting between us. The thing is, Chad, I said, and I kept my voice level because I wasn't angry, not exactly. I was just clear. I've had this managed a certain way for a long time. Harvey knows every piece of it. My wife knows every piece of it. I have a will and a powers of attorney and a succession plan that Harvey and a lawyer in Sudbury have already reviewed. There's nothing in here that needs restructuring. He nodded slowly. And, I continued, the Lorne Street property is already spoken for. My daughter knows that. It's in the will. He looked up at me. Spoken for how? He said. It goes to her, I said. Directly to her. Not to a joint account, not to a trust, not to a management structure. To her. That's been the plan since I bought it. He was very still. The Hanmer property is the same, I said. And the portfolio has a named beneficiary. Harvey made sure of it. Everything that goes to my daughter goes to my daughter. I watched him understand what I was telling him. It took a moment. Then I saw it land. He'd driven 4 hours in icy conditions to restructure assets that were already locked, named, and legally directed around him. Not against him, that's important. I wasn't punishing him for anything. Not yet. I was just being a father who knew his business. If he was the man I thought he was, that would be the end of it. If he wasn't, I'd know soon enough. I appreciate you coming up, I said. My wife made extra lasagna. Take some home. He took the lasagna. He drove back to Toronto. He called me 3 weeks later with what he described as a different idea. Something about me co-signing on an investment property in the Niagara region that he and a colleague were developing. He said it was a strong opportunity, good cap rate, he'd give me the full prospectus. I said, I'll have Harvey look at it. Harvey looked at it. Harvey called me at 8:30 on a Monday morning, which Harvey never does, and said I would not touch this with someone else's 10-foot pole. I called Chad back and said Harvey had concerns about the structure and I'd have to pass. He said he understood. His voice was tight. After that, things changed between him and my daughter. I didn't know the details at first. My wife knew more than I did. She said there were arguments about money. She said my daughter had started asking questions about the joint account that she wasn't getting straight answers to. In September, my daughter called me on a Tuesday night from her car. Dad, she said, I need to tell you something. She told me she'd hired a family lawyer. She told me she'd been doing a financial review on her own, separately from Chad, with a financial advisor she trusted. She told me what she'd found. Money that had moved out of the joint account in ways she couldn't account for, 3 transfers over 8 months to a numbered company she'd never heard of. She was calm. She was the way she always is, practical, clear, already 3 steps into solving the problem. But I could hear underneath it. I know, my girl. I want you to know, she said, that I'm okay. I'm going to be okay. I know you are, I said. I'm going to start divorce proceedings. Okay, I said. I wanted you to know first. I appreciate that, sweetheart. There was a pause. Outside my window, the maple in the backyard was going red. October comes early in Sudbury. I watched a leaf come down. Dad, she said, I know you never really liked him. I thought about that for a second. I thought about the barbecue, the blazer, the handshake. I thought about the slide deck on the kitchen table and the expression on his face on page 11. I didn't dislike him, I said. I just wasn't surprised. She laughed, a short, real laugh, the kind that costs something. That's very you, she said. I said, are you somewhere safe tonight? She said yes, she was staying with a friend, a colleague from work. She had her things. She'd made arrangements. I said, good. Call me tomorrow. She said she would. I sat for a while after we hung up. My wife came to the kitchen doorway and looked at me. I gave her the short version. She nodded. She poured herself a cup of tea, sat down across from me, and we stayed like that for a while without saying much, because after 37 years that's sometimes enough. The divorce took 8 months. I won't go into all of it. What I will say is that my daughter's lawyer was very good, and that Harvey, God bless Harvey Delorme, had every document organized in a way that made my daughter's financial picture entirely clear and entirely separate from anything Chad Anstruther could reach. The Lorne Street property. the Hanmer property, the beneficiary designations on the portfolio. Everything I had built and directed and named over 30 years. It was a wall, and he never knew it was a wall until he walked into it. His lawyer apparently had some questions about the family trust proposal he'd made to me in Sudbury. Whether it had been discussed with my daughter, whether she'd known about it. I understand there were some uncomfortable conversations. The numbered company came up too. 3 transfers, 8 months, just under $14,000 that had moved in ways he had trouble explaining. His story changed twice. The settlement did not go the way he'd hoped. My daughter kept the condo. He left Toronto. I heard secondhand, I wasn't looking for information, it just comes, that he moved to Calgary. I don't wish him anything either way. He made his choices. They came out the way they came out. My daughter moved back to Sudbury for a year. Not because she had to. Because she wanted to. She took a leave from the hospital network, consulted part-time for a regional health authority, and spent a lot of evenings in my kitchen eating my wife's cooking and watching HGTV and just being somewhere that was simple and safe. We didn't talk about Chad much. There wasn't a lot to say. She's not someone who lingers in the past, my girl. She got up every morning, she took the dog for a walk. We got her a dog, a ridiculous golden retriever named something I can't pronounce, because she named him after a character in a book she was reading, and she slowly got back to herself. One evening in January, we were playing cards at the kitchen table. Rummy. She's been beating me at rummy since she was 11 years old, and she knows it. She laid down her hand and said, without looking up from the cards, "Dad, when did you know? With Chad, I mean. When did you know he was going to be a problem?" I thought about that. First time I shook his hand, I said. She looked up. "And you didn't say anything? You were happy," I said. She looked at me for a moment, then she said, "And the folder. The folder you put on the table when he came up. What about it? You had that ready before he got here." I sorted my cards. "Harvey works fast." She shook her head slowly, but she was smiling. The real one, the one that goes all the way up to her eyes, her mother's smile. "You're a piece of work," she said. "I'm a retired miner," I said. "We're careful with structures." She laughed. She put down a card. I picked it up. Useless to me. "The house on Lorne Street," she said after a moment. "Did you really plan for that to go to me? Or did you just say that to page 7 of my will?" I said. "Check with Harvey if you don't believe me." She was quiet. "It's been there since 2009, I said. "Before you were even with him." She put her cards face down on the table. She didn't say anything for a minute. Then she said, "Dad, that's all. Just Dad." There's a lot in that word when your kid says it like that. I've heard it angry, exasperated, laughing, frightened. That night it was something else. Something quieter. "Play your cards," I said. She did. She won. She always does. In the spring, she went back to Toronto. New position, bigger role, a condo in a different neighborhood, Roncesvalles, she said. Old Polish neighborhood, good bakeries, trees on the street. She sounded like herself again. She sounded better than herself, actually. The way people sometimes do when they've come through something hard and discovered they were sturdier than they knew. I drove down to help her move. Well, I supervised. My knees aren't what they were. I directed 2 guys from a moving company and assembled 1 bookshelf and ate a very good pierogi from the place on the corner and declared the neighborhood acceptable. She walked me to my truck when it was time to leave. We stood on the sidewalk. April, but still cool, the way Toronto is in spring. It lies to you about the temperature. She hugged me for a long time. "Thank you," she said. "For all of it." "I didn't do much," I said. "You did exactly enough," she said. "That's different." I drove home up the 400, windows cracked, country radio, stopping for coffee and berry the way I always do. Snow was mostly gone from the fields by then. The birches were just starting to show green. I thought about my father. I thought about my mother selling the car. I thought about a duplex on Lorne Street and a legal pad on a kitchen table and 31 years underground, and what it means to build something nobody can see until the moment it matters. I thought about a man with a slide deck and a wool coat, sitting at my kitchen table, going quiet on page 11. I built what I built. I protected what I protected. And the people I love are fine. That's enough for me.